This is WFYI News Now. It's October 7th, and I'm Zach Bundy. On today's show, Indiana Fever's Caitlin Clark is named WNBA Rookie of the Year. The U.S. Department of Labor launches a new resource for workers with disabilities. Republican gubernatorial candidate Mike Braun proposes policies to help Hoosiers deal with inflation. And the Mobilize Recovery Bus stopped in Indianapolis as part of a national tour to destigmatize addiction recovery.
Many states throughout the country just last session passed fentanyl test strip bills, making them fully legal, and now Indiana is woefully behind.
Those stories coming up, but first. Today is the last day to register to vote in Indiana. Voter registration is at the end of the day if you plan to register online. You can also register by mail if it's postmarked today, or in person at your local election administrator's office before 4:30 p.m. If you need to register or update your registration, you have to provide some proof of residence. The quickest way to do that is by submitting your driver's license or state ID number or the last 4 digits of your social security number. To be eligible to vote, you have to be 18 years old by Election Day, a citizen of the United States, and have lived in your current address in Indiana for at least 30 days before Election Day. The general election is on Tuesday, November 5th. Caitlin Clark can now add WNBA Rookie of the Year to her list of accomplishments. WFYI's Eric Weddle has more.
In her first year, Clark made a single-season record of 337 assists and set the single-season rookie records for total points scored and the number of three-pointers made. During her end-of-the-season exit interview, Clark said between the team's accomplishments and the fans, she has a lot of memories she's taking away from her first WNBA season.
Your rookie year is something you're always going to cherish as you go throughout your career. I think it was a huge learning opportunity for myself. I learned a lot about myself as a basketball player, as a person, being resilient when your back's up against the wall.
Last year, the Fever's Aaliyah Boston received the award. I'm Eric Weddle.
The U.S. Department of Labor launched a new resource that will provide workplace accommodation ideas for workers with disabilities and their employers. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Tamoria Cunningham reports the database offers hundreds of examples of reasonable accommodations, which employers are required to provide under the Americans with Disabilities Act.
The Situations and Solutions Finder is a new feature accessible through the DOL's Job Accommodation Network, or JAN. The new resource offers over 700 accommodation examples across different industries. Users can search by disability, limitation, or occupation, and the site will generate applicable accommodation ideas. Tracy DeFreitas is the Director of Training and Outreach for JAN.
The way things are customarily done that enable people with disabilities to enjoy equal employment opportunities, they're essential for fostering inclusion and elevating the productivity of all employees.
DeFreitas says the Situations and Solutions Finder can provide the users a perspective on accommodations that they may not have had before. You can access this free tool at askjan.org. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Tamoria Cunningham.
Republican gubernatorial candidate Mike Braun is proposing a series of policies that he says will help Hoosiers dealing with the effects of inflation. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith reports on Braun's latest campaign proposal.
Braun's plan would add on to his property tax reduction proposal by eliminating taxes for retirement income and service workers' tips. The Republican is also proposing a series of tax holidays, periods where the sales tax would be waived on certain items. Those include holidays for school supplies, outdoor recreation supplies, and youth sports equipment. Braun would also push for further reductions to the tax that businesses pay on their equipment. Outside of taxes, Braun's proposal includes measures to potentially stop utility companies from retiring coal and natural gas-fired power plants and speed up permitting for some solar farms. And the Republican candidate wants to continue work on eliminating state regulations while also potentially firing state employees he deems unnecessary. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith at the State House.
And for our final story today, the Mobilize Recovery Bus stopped in Indianapolis Friday as part of a national tour aimed at destigmatizing addiction recovery. Ben Thorpe reports state officials and advocacy organizations spoke at the event.
The bus tour is organized by Mobilize Recovery, a nonprofit that supports addiction recovery initiatives nationwide. It stopped at the headquarters of the Public Advocates in Community Reentry, or PACE, in downtown Indianapolis on Friday. Across the state, roughly 8% of Hoosiers have a substance use disorder, according to a report from the IU School of Public Health. During the most recent legislative session, advocates called for the decriminalization of drug test strips, which they say can be life-saving. Representative Victoria Garcia Wilburn authored a bill to clarify state law on drug strips, which ultimately failed. She says she plans to introduce the bill again next year.
Many states throughout the country just last session passed fentanyl test strip bills, making them fully legal, and now Indiana is woefully behind.
Some 30 local organizations around addiction recovery attended the event. I'm Ben Thorpe.
That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Today's podcast was produced by me, Zach Bundy, with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal Estes, Kendall Antron produced our music, and I'm your host, Zach Bundy. If you liked today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back tomorrow.